You carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
Imagine this scenario. The White House releases a counterterrorism strategy document that names your enemies, maps their networks, and confirms what SDN has been briefing for years. And then you read it again, slowly this time, and you start to notice what isn't there. No partner nation is named by name. The domestic facilitation infrastructure is described in broad strokes. The blurb on infrastructure attacks gets 2 paragraphs. It's out of 26 pages. The ideological conveyor belt that keeps producing new threat actors is acknowledged but not mapped. The document is the most honest thing Washington has published in years, but it's also a negotiated product. And what didn't survive the negotiation will still be moving against our country. Tonight we go where the strategy stops. Welcome to Survival Dispatch News for Friday, May 29th. Got the date right tonight. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined by my good friends Khalid Mohammed from Command 11 Intelligence, 26-year CIA case officer Jeff MD, combat wounded Green Beret Randy Nance, and 24-year CBP Special Agent JJ Carroll, who announced last Friday, I believe it was, that he's running for president in 2028, just in case you all didn't catch that. Manley did a great picture, by the way, showing him running for president. Bottom line up front, Wednesday's broadcast that Khalid and Jeff and I did confirmed that the 2026 Counterterrorism Strategy validated SDN's framework at 90 to 95% alignment. But tonight our panel is going to cover the gap, the threat categories that didn't survive the interagency review process, and the operational space that hostile actors will exploit in the distance between what the government admitted and what it still won't say. Your family's security posture needs to be calibrated against the threats that your government names, but the threats that didn't make it into the document will move against your community regardless of whether they appear in a federal strategy, and the gap between official acknowledgement and actual threat activity will be the most dangerous terrain you'll navigate in the next phase of America under siege. So what we're covering tonight, we're going to walk you through Khalid's intelligence community level gap analysis of what the strategy understates, break down the early warning indicators of threats that won't appear in public advisories, connect tonight's analysis forward to the infrastructure attack arc that's the next phase of this series, diagnose the specific vulnerabilities created by trusting an official document as a complete picture, and give you 3 actionable steps to build a threat awareness posture that doesn't depend on federal alerts. Before we get into it, tonight's broadcast is brought to you by our friends at Vault Strategic Mining. The threat picture we've laid out, Iranian proxies, ISIS-K external operations, the border infiltration corridor, all of it ultimately comes down to one question. Is America capable of defending herself? The answer to that depends on more than troop strength and intelligence assets. It depends on supply chains. It depends on tungsten. Nearly every jet, every tank round, every precision munition contains it. And the U.S. hasn't mined it commercially since 2015. China controls the supply. President Trump signed Project Vault, a $12 billion critical minerals initiative to change that. Vault Strategic Mining is trading as KNOX on the TSX Venture and KNXFF here in the United States. Their Nevada flagship sits on a historically proven tungsten belt that operated under a defense minerals contract in World War II. This is national resilience, not speculation. Link is in the description below, vaultstrategicmining.com. So once again, I want to thank Vault Strategic Mining for sponsoring tonight's episode. Getting right into segment number 1, what an intelligence subject matter expert sees that didn't make the federal document. Clede will tell you that every strategy document is also a negotiated document. The threats that made it into print are the threats someone in the interagency process was willing to own publicly. And the threats that didn't make it through represent the operational space that hostile actors will use precisely because Washington won't name them in writing. The strategy's treatment of network convergent will understate the operational maturity of the relationships between Sunni jihadist networks, Iranian Shia proxy infrastructure, far left facilitation cells, and cartel logistics chains. Clede's assessment is that in several of those relationships, the emergence phase will already be over by the time any official document acknowledges it. The domestic facilitation infrastructure is the strategy describes in broad terms will be far more granular and institutionally embedded than the document maps. Front businesses, just like Clede and Jeff spoke about the other night ago, recruited assets inside diaspora communities, financial pipelines running through legitimate institutions, and the level of specificity that would make that picture actionable for your local law enforcement will never survive a public strategy's political review process. So with that being said, bring everybody on stage here. And Clede, I'm going to give Jeff a break, and I'm going to come straight to you with the first question tonight. What's the most significant thing, based on your career in the intelligence community, tell you about what the government strategy document left out?
We can't even start with what they left out because there's so much that they didn't account for, so many things that they tried to combine into one argument or one threat that don't exist as one threat. The first thing that I look at is America's infrastructure has been repeatedly targeted by cyber actors, bad actors, looking specifically at where weaknesses are. If you're not going to protect your grid, you're not going to protect America. That's the first thing, and that was nowhere in the counterterrorism strategy. The second thing is the level of cyber attacks that are going on in the U.S. right now. China, Russia, Iran are laying waste throughout the U.S. Banks, hospitals, the amount of data they're taking out. China has gone so far that they've created an agency called the Information Source that is part of the Chinese intelligence division that's responsible for specifically attacking the U.S. on an information technology level. That means getting data, getting schematics, getting information, getting codes. What do you think those are going to be used for when they get hold of them? Nowhere in the document. Number 3, you didn't talk about vertical and horizontal. The U.S. war has now turned. The U.S. counterterrorism war is now vertical as much as it is horizontal. While you're looking at the threat actor in front of you, you're not looking at space on top. And drones are able to hit you from everywhere and do intelligence and surveillance and reconnaissance without any problem, without any kind of interdiction. When you look at all of that, then you come down to the point of looking at it from the political point of view. Jeff said it the other night that this is almost like a cover your ass document. That we've told you what these problems are, but you haven't really told us what the problems are because you haven't identified anyone. You haven't explained how these threats are going to affect the U.S. You haven't explained how you're going to fight them. You haven't explained how you're going to turn your fusion centers into productive, active organizations that can funnel intelligence down to ground level to sheriff's offices, police departments, so that action can be taken. We're still sitting here going, where's the document? And I'll give you a bombshell that we picked up on the intelligence wire the other night. Donald Trump's relationship with Giuliani has been very questionable for all of us since the very beginning. And we've talked about this a number of times on the program. We are going to see Syria being used against Iran, and not Syria, but HTS and ISIS used against Iran as part of the war on weakening the Iranian regime. When you start including non-state actors and the U.S. supporting them, that turns into a recipe for disaster. And that can come back, the blowback of that will come back to the U.S. homeland. Whether the U.S. understands what they're doing and why this is the wrong thing to do, or whether they're doing this from the point of view, well, we're only interested in collapsing Iran, the blowback that comes back to the U.S. will be 1,000 times more. Just look at what's going on in Afghanistan. You pulled out and you left everything behind and you've continued to fund them. They have turned into the center of jihad, center of warfare for the entire world. When you do that with Syria as well, and then you got Somalia and then you got Sudan and Mali, where ISIS is re-emerging. You've established a tripod in the Middle East where they can attack every single ally that you have, and that war will end up in Europe. That war will end up in the U.S. homeland.
Thanks, Cleve, for kicking us off to a thorough, comprehensive opening. And it's going to be quite a competition tonight between you and JJ for who gets the mantle ray of sunshine. JJ has picked that torch up for you, by the way, while you're in your absence.
You know what we're called? You know what we're called? Not sunshine. It's called truth tellers. And some people, some liberals like Chris, can't handle the truth.
Hey, I picked up my truck today, fourth tranny in 5 years in that beast. And the guy says, "Do you want a ladder to get in your truck?" And I looked up, I was like, no, I can get my truck just fine, even though it's got 16 inches of lift. I watched him use a ladder getting in and out. And he says, "Well, I got quite a few years on you." He said, "How old are you?" I said, "I'm going to be 60 in a couple of years. He said, "Oh, well, maybe I don't have that much." Yeah. And I told him, I said, JJ Carroll, Mike Glover, best bro talks on the market. It's making me a little bit jaundiced, but it works like a champ. So coming straight to you on this one, JJ, because I want to hear your firsthand experience confronting this while you were Border Patrol and then ICE as well. So the strategy document acknowledges this convergence between hostile networks, right? Like the jihadis working with the cartels, working with the Chinese, so on and so forth. But it didn't go into a tremendous amount of detail. I'd like to hear your thoughts on how far along that convergence is operationally, like in real life, let's say.
The convergence of intel to the frontline guys, is that what you're asking me?
The convergence of jihadis, cartels, Chinese, nation states, all of them working together against us.
That's already been so documented down on the border. Everyone knows it. It's a quiet little secret no one really wants to talk about because we're not doing anything about it. That's why no one wants to talk about it. What happened to going after the cartels? Mexico is a narco state. It's a narco state. But we're in Iran. We're 7,000 miles away fighting Iran. They have nothing that's going to hurt us. And we're next door. Like I used to look across the border into Tijuana. Like, dear God, what are we doing? And it's absolutely, this is why we're not hearing about it, Chris. This is why has anybody mentioned the cartels, the Mexican cartels, the drug cartels? How many, let me ask you this, better question. Last year, or the 4 years under Joe Biden, how many people died of drug overdoses with the vast 90-something%, besides the meth here in America, 90-something% of all hard narcotics come through Mexico? At least 150, 200,000 a year. A year. It was 50,000 under Donald Trump's last year. Biden, because open borders, was 3 times that. 150, let's say 150. So we have 600,000 people died of Mexican drug cartels, and versus how many Iranians killed us. And yet we just ignore it. It's not accidental. Like, this is on purpose. There's no way any group of people could be this stupid year after year after year after year. It has to be intentional. There is no one working to stop it. And if you want to talk about all the high level stuff and we're going to do this and you haven't done a damn thing. I lived on the border for 24 years. No one did a damn thing. The drugs keep pouring over. Why? Because there's a supply and demand issue. But it's filled with fentanyl because the Chinese have brought over 2,000 of their scientists, put them in the northern states of Mexico, sent over all the pill presses. They're not all together. They send parts over. They create the pill presses here. and they go to work, and America does nothing. And our president, Donald Trump, has been fixated on Middle Eastern foreign wars and the enemies at our doorsteps. And we're trying to shoot catapult stuff, all the way to the next river, like we're in the Middle East, in the Middle Ages. This is insanity, what we're living through.
But man, that's a great analogy there from a firsthand perspective, JJ. I appreciate that. You're going to have to up your game, Khalid. JJ's swinging hard. So far, he is the leader for Ray of Sunshine title tonight.
What, Mr. Liberal? I would like to ask Khalid just a question. Does that make sense to you, Khalid, what I'm saying when I'm on the border talking about all the drug cartels, all the devastation of drugs in America? And this is what they're categorizing, right? So you can't even imagine really how bad this problem is, and we're doing nothing about it. I mean, from your perspective, being in the Middle East, looking at us fixated on the Middle East when the terrorists are inside Mexico working with the Mexicans and they're killing us, and no one does anything. It's like I live in the Twilight Zone. Am I off? Am I in my own little world?
Not at all, JJ. You're dead. This is the argument I've had with U.S. intelligence for a long time. You're so fixated on foreign countries that are no threat to you at all, and the real threat that exists to the U.S. homeland, you're not interested in touching. China is in the middle. Is in Mexico. Iran is in Mexico. Hezbollah is in Mexico. Al Qaeda is in Mexico. ISIS is in Mexico. You're not even interested in dealing with Mexico. And when I read the counterterrorism strategy, I went, "Are you kidding? Are you purposely leaving the Western Hemisphere out of the argument of what a threat is to the U.S.?"
Let's go down that rabbit hole a little bit. Welcome Randy back. His picture looks amazing. Randy doesn't even need Botox because he got a spiffy new laptop. Makes him look at least, I don't know, 10, 11 months younger than he used to.
What he's not telling you, though, is he's got a bunch of filters on there to make him look really young. Got one that gives him long blonde hair, too.
I'll be honest, that was the first thing I said. I said, "Oh, well, there's no more hiding behind that fuzzy camera anymore."
Dude, he darkened his beard, too. Look at that.
He's got the Fabio filter.
A little bit of that Botox going on,
There you go. Randy, jump in on this topic of all of these enemies, adversaries are set up in Mexico, and on the surface, we're not really doing much about it. Dollar-wise, we're definitely not doing anything about it compared to the Middle East.
Well, I was going to say, do we know that we're not? I believe JJ won because he was in the Border Patrol his entire life. He also was just in ICE, so he would know. But, the press isn't going to cover it. Who else is going to tell us? Do we know that there's nothing going on in Mexico or not? I mean, as far as I know, even before all this come up, there's a bunch of guys that worked with me and everywhere else in special operations that are now down south right now, down there, the same as Doc Pete is. So I don't know that nothing is going on, but I would agree that we seem to the layman and to what we see and what we know, what's being released to us, it looks like that we're off all around the world doing some stuff, but no one's doing anything about here. Just like as Khalid just mentioned, when they finally released this document, it's glaringly missing everything that's here. And so, it's hard to discern because, again, we don't get the full brief. I don't know that any of us do, although there's a couple on here tonight that would know more than most of us. None of us got the full picture of what the president gets to see every day on what his intelligence brief is. So but just going off of what we see, I'm just like everybody else. What's going on with all the deportations, what's going on with all the drugs and the cartels, all this stuff. And then besides just the illegal aliens that came in, that apparently none of them are really worth having. But then we talk about all the jihadists that came in. And again, just to re-tap on something we don't mention all the time, we know that there's a bunch of Chinese here that came in also. And, what are all those people doing? And why aren't we getting this stuff out? Why aren't we protecting the grid? Why aren't we upgrading it? And none of that. So to me, it just looks like they're just allowing this to continue going on till whatever happens next, because it's coming. We've been talking about it. Again, it may not be 9/11 2.0, but it may involve some of that. It very well could be, though. But it could be any number of things they decide to unravel, including what we may see now with this Ebola stuff. We have no idea what their plans are, but I guarantee you when the next shoe that drops, we will finally figure it out. And, God help us all at that point, because I think that a lot of people will be woefully unprepared.
Yeah, true story. So let's consult Encyclopedia MD first, and then I have a question for you too, Jeff. Did I hear correctly that we're spending somewhere in the neighborhood of $1 billion a day on the Iran stuff? Has that kind of gone down since the bombing has gone down?
It's probably about that. I mean, it was probably a little higher at the beginning, or maybe a little bit less now. But you keep that many men, that much equipment, and naval vessels deployed, not cheap.
So I don't know if there's any numbers published or not, but how would you speculate that dollar value is related to what we spend against narco terrorists and foreign actors in Mexico?
Yeah, I think it's larger by an order of magnitude.
Okay, that's what I thought. So I think that kind of proves JJ's point.
Yeah, we're doing strikes on narco boats. Those are cheap. I mean, basically, it's a Seahawk helicopter with a relatively small and inexpensive surface-to-air missile. Boom, you're done. Or a chain gun, even cheaper. But yeah, we need to be paying attention, because was it yesterday I saw an article where they arrested 6 military-age Chinese nationals with military-looking haircuts wearing camouflage in Eagle Pass, Texas.
Yep, that's good point bringing that up.
What the hell is that all about?
We could go down that rabbit hole, but I want to reel us back into the topic at hand.
Yeah, that's right. Nothing to see here.
Yeah, right. So the question I had for you, Jeff, is what does the domestic, let's call it terrorist infrastructure look like that didn't make it into the document that'll actually, change things at the street level? I'll just prime you by saying, like, halal markets popping up all over the place. Like, what is the list of all of those things that we need to be aware of?
Well, they hide inside the Muslim community. I mean, all terrorist groups do. The Vietnamese Tongs hide within the Vietnamese community. The Laotian gangs hide within the Laotian community. Tren de Aragua goes within the Venezuelan community. So you have to be looking, and people don't want to do this. Oh, it sounds Islamophobic, but you got to be looking at the Islamic community, because Randy saw it in Iraq. They use the mosques as basically staging areas, maybe even ammo dumps, because they know we don't want to go in there. It's politically incorrect, and it's it's dangerous politically to do that. So when you see an area becoming rapidly Islamified, that's a warning. But I think what they're missing is what Khalid has pointed out. You've got these people in the Islamic community that are their facilitators. They may not be the actors, they're not shooters, but they're the guys that house them and feed them and provide them with whatever they need. So when they decide to act and they pull the trigger, they're launching from these guys' houses.
So there was a recent document discovered from the Muslim Brotherhood, approximately 5 years old, that said their mission to take over Tennessee, the belt buckle of the Bible Belt, had succeeded, and it was therefore time to move on to Texas. And you may recall last year when I was in Nashville for work that I called it Nashvillistan. It's completely taken over. I was the only freaking white guy in the hotel restaurant and stuff like that. Khalid, coming back to you on the IC side, the intelligence community side. So the strategy acknowledges threat categories. Do you reckon that means that because they've identified them, that they actually have the apparatuses and the SOPs and everything. And here we go. Ray of Sunshine fixing to step up and take a swing at it. Let her rip, Khalid.
Now, U.S. counterterrorism has been an absolute mess for almost 10 years. From Obama to Biden, counterterrorism was decimated. When you started to move into the first Trump administration, there was a little bit of resilience coming back, but that resilience disappeared very quickly because Trump got some really bad advisors, and some of those advisors are part of the current government. Seth Gorka, I'm talking about you, that need to be taken out of the loop. You don't have the right people advising the president. I know for a fact, and I said this on Wednesday night, that I know for a fact that President Trump was briefed on weapons of mass destruction and chemical warfare being waged on the U.S. as part of a terror attack. President Trump threw the document in the garbage and said, this is an absolute joke. This could never happen in America. That means the people that are advising the president are not advising the president. I come back to this counterterrorism strategy and I go, wow, someone sat down with a pad and was bored with a bottle of beer and said, all right, so what all can we list out and cover our asses so that if something happens tomorrow, we're not going to worry, we're not going to be concerned. The Muslim Brotherhood is the root of terrorism. We've known that for 30 years. What have you done? What have you done about it? Ever since President Trump came into office, he has declared certain divisions of the Muslim Brotherhood as foreign terrorist organizations, but he will not take the step of declaring the Muslim Brotherhood itself as a terrorist organization. How much of a difference would that make? Let me walk you through just that one statement. When you turn the Muslim Brotherhood into a foreign terror organization, that means every mosque in the U.S., is gone. That is all. They all fall under facilitating terrorism because they're all owned by the Muslim Brotherhood. CARE is gone. The Epic City in Texas is gone because that's Muslim Brotherhood money. The problem we have right now is that Muslim Brotherhood has worked for 20 years to embed themselves into the State Department. They have married into white American men and women, so they have their power and influence at home. And when you start looking at it from that point of view, thinking there's SOPs for what they've written, there are a bunch of interns and researchers sitting at the FBI right now going, shit, they put this in the counterterrorism strategy. We need to put together a brief of some kind on what we tell the fusion centers. The link isn't there. Your federal level thought process and actionable intelligence isn't there to funnel down to your fusion centers. When it doesn't funnel down to your fusion centers, that means law enforcement's not ready, which means you are undefended in any way, shape, or form. The biggest concern we have right now, the World Cup is starting, I think, 2 weeks from now? And you've got 4th of July coming a month from now. You have major targets that terrorists will take advantage of, and you don't have any SOPs in place on what to do about anything. And my fear right now is the counterterrorism strategy was somebody's briefing document that was made public without anyone really thinking about it. Chris, you're on mute.
Rake. Khalid 1, Chris 0. Dang it. Anyway, I was saying that there's always outliers. And so we have some, we lost Jeff somehow there. She disappeared. I'll text him in a second. So I know for a fact here he is. There are certain counties, I'm not going to name them, in Florida that I have firsthand knowledge of that are way more prepared than other counties, but those are exceptions to the rule, unfortunately. JJ, you better, put your fighting gloves on here because Khalid, he came back swinging hard. If you are going to retain the undefeated, World Ray of Sunshine Championship, talk to me about this. There's one big thing missing from that counterterrorism strategy that I'm pretty sure will get your blood pressure going. There's not one word said about so-called partners, nations that we're supposedly partnered with, and their complicity in assisting terrorists and cartels and on down the line. What do you make of that?
What do you think? It's the Israel nation? Is that what we're talking about here?
I'm talking about every single nation out there who's basically not working in our best interest.
Why should they? I wouldn't partner with us the only reason people partner with us is to take money and resources from us. You know, the one thing that Khalid has been saying, and just to follow up on, we're doing everything backwards. Like, nothing makes sense. And then you have to ask yourself, are we really that incompetent? Like, do we have that many stupid people in positions of authority and power? And there's no way. There's no way that you can have that many people making this many bonehead decisions every single year. We're just chasing our tails. There are no law enforcement that are ready, local, state. We're not ready. We're not ready. We're all reactionary, and we know that. All the guys in law enforcement know that 100%. We'll be there to help you, but we're not going to figure this out. We're not. And then it comes back full circle. Why are we spending all this money across the globe? Why are we doing this? Why don't we just focus on America? And if we stop bombing everybody, here's a great idea. If we stop bombing everybody, maybe everybody would stop hating us. Maybe. I don't know. It's worth a shot, right? Could we try something different than what we're doing now? But as far as partnering, why would anybody partner with us? Look what we do. We just turn our back on certain people, then we funnel money into certain others, and then we're led around by a foreign government, and everybody knows it. It's the dirty little secret that nobody wants to talk about, is that our governmental institutions are compromised, and the people that run them are compromised. Period.
True story. True story. You're gonna have to try harder though to unseat Khalid. I mean, you're pretty gloomy, but like,
I just can't. I can't get to that level yet.
Yeah,
Sorry.
well, you've been there. You've been there for weeks now.
Throw in some transgender border patrol chiefs and things like that, and then I'll get really amped up.
I can do that.
Okay.
Just give me a minute to come up with the angle. There's nobody on this panel, nobody that I know better and have called a friend for many years than Randy to step in and address JJ's comments there. Randy, why are we spending all of this money on all these foreign conflicts, foreign countries, yet we have a huge number of vets committing suicide each day? And it's not this number that's been thrown out, 23, whatever, 25 a day. That number's been thoroughly debunked. It was one person who said that on the national news, and everybody picked it up and ran with it. It's more like 50 to 100 veterans a day are committing suicide. It's not 20 something.
Wow.
It's way out of frickin' line. Look it up, JJ. It's totally been debunked. Randy, I mean,
well,
again,
I think that they omit the car wrecks, which some people do kill themselves by intentionally wrecking their car or truck. They took out ODs and a couple of other metrics where they took out, which affected the numbers of the suicide. You know, to address JJ's comments, you know, I think that there's more at play than what, like I said earlier, than what we probably know about. But the reality is, the rest of the world's not going to partner with us right now because we're not going along with the transgender thing. That's the truth of it. All those global elites, they're not all in America. You think those 147 residents that have nodes to that one communication on that one internet that no one else has, they're not all in America. Those are all around the world. And the global elites tell all the governments what to do, including ours. So when we want to look at somebody to blame, really it's these global elites that are doing everything they can, because just as JJ mentioned, all these mistakes, and y'all have heard me say it before, you can't be that stupid to make that many mistakes, or they wouldn't be in those jobs. And then some of these jobs that we're talking about, we know they're the smartest people on the planet, or the smartest people they could find. So the only thing you can deduce is that's intentional. And so what you got to realize is we don't matter now to the global elites. Now that they've got their AI going, and that's moving at, you know, an unprecedented pace, they're going to replace us. So the common people like us and the worker bees, we're not going to be the worker bees anymore. We're going to be the people in the way. of the system. So they're going to want to just shoo us off to the side. So, as far as why other countries aren't partnering with us, I think that's the biggest deal of it all, because really right now you look at Canada and a few of these other countries and people are like, what are they doing? Well, it's because they're following the plan of the global elites. And that's why it doesn't make any sense to us, because it's evil, right? It's demonic. It's satanic what they're doing. Pushing transgenderism and gay on kids in school or by their moms before they're even 10 years old, that's a problem. And, everything else we're doing is a problem. So I think really it doesn't matter what we say or what we think. We are moving towards what they want to happen, and we're going to get there. I don't think there's any way that we're going to stop it now, because we don't have enough people in those positions of power and prominence that aren't on their side. So the few that are not aren't going to do anything because they don't want to get attacked and lose everything they have. I'm speculating on that, but you got to ask yourself why the people that can't do something about it don't. It's no different than when we ask the Muslim community of, okay, well, if y'all don't all support these jihadists and this line of reasoning and where y'all are headed, then why don't y'all do something about it? It's no different. So, we're marching towards it, and I think we're just along for the ride. So I would say prepare as best you can and get ready for what's coming next. It's about to get bumpy.
True story. For everybody who's happy to see Randy back after his unplanned absence, pardon me, do me a favor, throw a 1 in the live chat. Jeff, when you look at all of the categories that are defined, different like jihadis, cartels, etc., which category of bad guys do you think is the most likely to produce mass casualty events on American soil that are not included in this strategy, that they either purposely left out or it wasn't negotiated in when all the agencies were at the table? But who's the biggest potential threat for us?
Well, I mean, if you look at a mass casualty event by number of people dead, the cartels, because every year we lose 4 times as many people to the cartels in a year than we lost in Vietnam in 10 years. So if you look at that, the cartels have the ability and are doing the worst damage to us. And people don't see it because maybe the average American, they don't see it. It's not their kid. It's not their neighbor who's dying of fentanyl overdoses. There's not a bomb going off, so you're not driving through and seeing a crater where a building used to be. Now you'll see in these homeless communities, you got to realize a lot of the homeless people are drug addicts. And so what you're seeing when you see all these homeless encampments and skid rows all over the place, that is the cartels damaging America. Now, sadly, those people are helping them because they're addicts and they're not the brightest bulbs in the drawer. But as far as now, if you're looking for a military style attack, you could do, Al Qaeda or ISIS-K, any of these could do another attack. They could do one, but if you want to take out a city, you're probably going to need a nation state. So probably Iran.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another quick audience poll for those of you who think that Jeff, dressed in his current attire, could pass for Father Mulcahy at a distance. Put a 1 in the live chat. And for those of you who don't know who Father Mulcahy is, just
put it 2.
just do a quick search on it. MASH. Khalid, I got to go to JJ because he's running short on time. Plus, I'm going to open the next segment with you, which is right after this question. JJ, if you were briefing a community leader, like in any community across the country, including your own, rather than a federal official, what would you tell them that the strategy doesn't tell them? In other words, what's not in the strategy document that was just released, this 2026 counterterrorism strategy, that you would say to these local leaders, hey, just put that down for a second because they missed the boat on X. What's X? Oh, hold on a second, JJ. You're on mute there, and it's not your fault. I was getting feedback from your mic. Oh, that's on me. Sorry. Go ahead, JJ.
No, I would say the thing is, let's get back to profiling. Let's get back to understanding where the threat is and who are the threat. Right? When I was working with ICE or in the Border Patrol, and I knew that the area was saturated with illegal aliens from Mexico and Central America. Well, would I be driving around looking for blondes and Norwegian type people? No. So the same thing applies. I think people are so nervous and so afraid to actually say, okay, that's weird. Why is that group of people all huddling around there in this community? Why are they all there? Why is there now a gigantic mosque? Well, it never was. Why are we seeing an influx of Indian nationals, for example? I have that where I live, and they're the vast majority are overstays, visa overstays. So I think we got to get outside the box of regular law enforcement. This is what I tell a local politician or city manager: get your guys to start thinking outside the box, especially in your small towns across America where they could basically hide out in the open.
Yeah, great angle, actually, but something I haven't heard anybody else actually articulate on the podcast that I watch, at least. So we're going to pivot into segment number 2, which is titled The Signals of What the Strategy Won't Say. The early warning indicators of the threats that didn't make the counterterrorism strategy are already present in your community, and they're already probably observable in your community, which JJ can attest to as well. This could be things like, so-called partner nations, where they have these front organizations. So Mexico, for example, has all of these, so-called Hispanic organizations across the country that are predicated on one thing: funnel money and support to candidates that will do things like DACA, the Dreamer crap, all that sort of stuff. And they're directly interfering with our elections and the management of our country. And then there's other things like pre-attack surveillance signatures around soft target venues. There was no discussion of that, by the way. Next generation recruitment activity. Clede's going to touch on that in these online ecosystems. I would say probably one of the biggest ones is actually online gaming has come to the fore as far as radicalizing people online. And they're doing a really, really good job of, speaking to call them the disaffected. Your local law enforcement, like JJ said, they're not going to receive a threat advisory. Sorry, Clede said that, especially about things like the grid, infrastructure probing, that these hostile state adjacent actors, it's always somebody like, oh, well, that was Salt Typhoon, Silk Typhoon. Like, they all have all these different names for the black hat groups in China. They're all CCP organizations, but the CCP has plausible deniability. We say, well, that's unsanctioned. That's not part of our government. So if they don't get any of those threat advisories, it's what JJ then said, everything's reactive. There's nothing being proactively done. So we're talking all the networks, right? So the power grid, the data networks, the cellular networks, even water treatment systems, everything has been infiltrated. Everything is vulnerable. And if that information doesn't get to, let's say, the sheriff's office, and your critical infrastructure's on the target list and gets taken down or messed up, it's going to happen before anybody wearing a badge knows about it in your jurisdiction, basically. The behavioral signatures of a cell that's transitioned from network building to target selection will appear in our communities weeks to months before any federal alert. And Khalid has especially spoken at length on that particular topic. The surveillance passes, that they get, basically from being a contractor working in a, facility like a hospital, the security response testing, which Clede has gone on about now for at least the 18 months that we've been working together and saying things, you see, that attack or bomb that was called in and then nothing happened. That was them probing. And I'll let him speak further to that. They've got stuff pre-positioned. We've even got warnings from SOs here in Florida to say, hey, those empty homes in your neighborhood, take a closer look at them and see who's coming and going and what time of day. The first warning that I saw was I don't remember which county it was Southern Florida, basically said they're being used by the TDA as stash houses. And that's what it looks like. Nobody's living there, but they'll come and go in the middle of the night as they pick up stuff or drop stuff off. But again, nobody lives there. And they stand out like a sore thumb in nicer neighborhoods. We had a couple that were in that state for about 3 years that we watched really, really closely. And I don't know what changed, but all of a sudden the person whose name was on both of them beside each other disappeared. Somebody else's name came on, and now all of a sudden there are Mexicans living in those places. So take that for whatever it's worth. With that being said, let me get the boys back up on stage here, and I want to have Khalid weigh in on this. Khalid, what does the pre-attack surveillance look like in an American community for someone trained to recognize it? I know you've gone over this ad nauseum, but you unfortunately have had bad experience the past few months for those who aren't aware. And we got lots of new viewers. Go ahead and take it, Khalid.
When you talk about how surveillance is carried out in the U.S. right now, there's 3 levels of surveillance that goes on in the U.S. Surveillance level number 1 is what foreign countries do, what they do with their satellites, where they're able to home in and watch certain places very closely. Level 2 is what they're doing with drones, where they're flying drones over sensitive locations. They're flying drones over stadiums. Just recently, the U.S. finally woke up to the fact that drones were flying over military bases, and they didn't know what to do about it. And the 3rd level of surveillance that's going on is the people that move in your community, and that's the most dangerous level of surveillance. Because what I can see from Google Maps, what I can see from a satellite does not come anywhere near explaining what my normal person walking on the street, walking into buildings, taking pictures, taking video of different locations provides him with surveillance. And I always, when we're talking about things like this, when I talk about China, I talk about the 3-war strategy. Level 1 warfare is the public opinion, where their media and their psychological campaign and their information warfare tries to turn everything into, well, everybody's anti-China, everyone's anti-China. Then there's a psychological warfare level that China uses, where that China model is now been so solidified that not only are they trying to change your behavior, but they're trying to change the way you think about your own country. And the way you see it very easily is through soft media, K-pop, music, the different stars that start to appear that are all Chinese. The last level of Chinese 3 warfare strategy is cyber. When you look at what they're doing on a cyber level, like I said earlier, they've now developed a complete division inside of Chinese intelligence whose total job is cyber warfare on the United States. We're not talking about any of that in the counterterrorism strategy. Then you turn around and you start talking about the foreign logistics. How many Indians own CTL licenses that let them drive those big rigs all over the United States, and you don't know who they are? You don't know what they're doing. You don't know what they're carrying. Those are all potential terrorists, and you don't know what they're doing, where they're living, how they're going to do it. How many accidents did we see in the last 6 months of 2025 that could have been prevented if it was someone that knew what they were doing behind the wheel of that kind of vehicle? The 3rd level we talk about is Russia's small wars theory, starting with a very small inciting event and slowly building up and launching a war. The warfare that you're talking about with counterterrorism, you have been seeing for the past 24 months. The terrorists have been mapping out every single location they're going to hit, from hospitals to electrical grids to food supply to shopping markets to shopping malls. They have mapped them out to the point where I have physically seen the models built of these buildings, where they were explained to their fighters, here's how you go in, this is where you go, this is where you get your most number of targets, this is where you start firing from. We have the videos of them explaining it. We are now at a point in U.S. counterterrorism where it's not counterterrorism anymore. It's holy shit, how do we defend ourselves with what's coming at us? And it's not one wave. JJ was talking about the cartels. Do you know that Iran pays the cartels to carry out assassinations? Do you know Hezbollah pays the cartels to carry out small wars inside of the United States? When is the U.S. going to put this into the counterterrorism strategy that, hey, wait a minute, we are facing a multitude of foreign actors, all of them fighting us at different levels, all of them pushing us into a position where we either declare martial law in the United States so we can fight them all, or we wake up, inform, educate our law enforcement. And I'll give you one quick fact before I close. From June of 2024 to May of 2026, 32% of your senior counterterrorism analysts left the FBI. Who's telling us what to do?
That's a big number, and I don't think I got everybody up on the other stage here. Yeah, let me pop everybody up here for 2 seconds. This is one of our videos that we ran a few years back. Look at the title down here for Survival Dispatch: Fentanyl Terrorist Attacks on Open Air Venues in America, where we released some intelligence that we had that basically said these terrorist groups were going to use, they were planning to use drones to disperse aerosolized fentanyl amongst other, chemicals and biological stuff. And even if you didn't kill everybody with the aerosolized stuff, the mass chaos would be crazy. You ready for this? Check this out. Just to back up what Khalid said. 2022, the NFL reported 2,537 drone incursions into NFL stadium restricted airspace. 2023, they reported 2,845. 2024, they said, more than 2,800 like last year, but we don't have an exact number. Last 3 seasons, they stopped reporting. And I think it's probably pretty easy to determine who forced them into, basically not reporting. JJ, how much time do you have left, brother?
I got 5 minutes, and I would love a chance just to follow up on what Khalid just said.
Do that, and then Randy will come to you right after that. We'll give JJ his final kick at the can here.
Well,
remember, shoot for the fences here if you want ray of sunshine, if you want to retain your title.
Khalid will be the ray of sunshine. He has that face that just says, I want to hug you, and I want to hold you tight.
Oh, my God.
Listen, what Khalid just said, and I think this is a very, very important thing to understand. We're worried about people and countries and organizations 7,000 miles away. They're already here in our country. And I'm going to give you just a couple data points that we discussed prior, but Khalid hit on it. It sparked me when he said it. We gave around 100,000 CDLs to foreign nationals. When Joe Biden came in, one of the, quote, jobs that the Biden administration, who is corrupt, wanted to have, think about this. Think about, like, this is like a bad decision, right? No, there's no real bad decisions this bad. When he did that, when they did that and gave like at least 100,000 CDLs to foreign nationals, 60 to 70% of the people that crossed the border were from terrorist nations and nations that harbor terrorism. We have people, they were giving CDLs in the state of New York, and the name that they had on their CDL was no name given. No name given. California gave 17 to 19,000 of these CDLs out. They were the leader in all of it. So if you want to move bombs, the materials for bombs, how do you do that? Are you loading up in a U-Haul and you're a guy from India? No. You're going to load up an 18-wheeler, and then you're going to transport it, and no one's going to check you. No one is going to check you. There's not enough guys to do this. We brought in open borders in 4 years. We brought in over 250,000 special interest aliens. 250,000 special interest aliens. Do Do you know how many I had in my entire 24-year career? Less than 5. Less than 5. And I was one of the high producers in San Diego sector. And that's a corridor for special interest aliens. 5. 200 to 250,000 came in our border, and they released them. They didn't have the Joint Terrorism Task Force. The JTTF has FBI-run terrorism task force in every sector in the border, every sector. They got so busy that they farmed it out to like subdivisions within the JTTF, and then they got so busy they farmed it out to regular Border Patrol agents that did not have any of the databases, didn't know how to speak Farsi or whatever language they're going to do, so they just released them. And I heard that straight from guys that were in the field telling me, do you understand what we're doing? And I said, I don't. Tell me. I am 100% certain that I'm releasing terrorists out into the street every single day. And they're here. And if you believe they're not here in America, you are an absolute fool.
Yeah, thanks, JJ. This shithead's back again from a couple nights ago. You're clueless, Darrell Walker. He says, I can't do this anymore. You're all telling us what's coming, but not what we can do now. We end every single episode with a minimum of 3 things that you can do relative to the topic at hand. So shut your fucking mouth, moron. And you can keep running your dick sucker in the comment section if you want, but you don't have a fucking clue what you're talking about.
I have to leave on that homophobic slur. I can't do it anymore. I've never heard that type of language in my whole life.
Well,
I feel offended.
You know, that's my job. That's what I do. Thanks, JJ. Take care.
Oh, you guys. God bless you.
Yeah,
all right,
good to
guys.
see you, JJ.
Bye-bye. All
right, everybody else, hang with us. We've got another segment and a half to get through here tonight. Randy, I want to come to you, and I'm not asking you to divulge anything that they teach you as a Green Beret with regards to monitoring, bad people in whatever theater that you find yourself in, and looking for signals that are telling you that they're moving from operational to, getting ready to attack. But give me what you can. Give the audience what you can as far as these behavioral shifts that tell you an enemy, like a jihadi cell, for example, they're done with the preparation and now they're moving to targeting.
Well, I think honestly, they're probably already past targeting. I mean, let's just call it for what it is. We've known about this for 2 or 3 years. They're probably already past targeting. But what you're talking about was, certainly when you start targeting, and that's when all the probing starts, right? You're going to do different types of probes to, as we've mentioned many times, to get the response times, where people are coming from, how things move, how it works, how it all comes together, and what the timing of it all is. So I would assume that that's already done. I would bet this plan's already ready to go. It's just waiting for the event, just like the Summer of Love was waiting for one event. And then we had George Floyd and Chavez event. And as you know, the very next day, 28 states erupted. The reason I say that was what that was. I've got an echo, but is because when those 28 states erupted, if they would have all had 28 different messages, like if you go to 10 different doctors or 10 different attorneys, you're going to get 10 different opinions almost 100% of the time. So when 28 states erupted into riots and they all had the same signs and the same verbiage, that tells me this was an organized network that just got energized and all the stuff was in play and ready. All they needed was the event to kick it off. And so I don't know what the metrics with that were. Obviously, they needed something between law enforcement with being a white officer and a black criminal for them to kick that said event off. So what I would say, all the things that we've watched over the last couple of years, whether it be New Orleans or some of these other lone shooter things, and then all these others that have been fake shooters or fake bomb calls, that is the targeting. That is what tells you there's some targeting going on, because that is some of the stuff that we would do to hash out our targets and then have them picked. So the next, what you have to worry about is when the action part starts. And I don't think anybody's got to really be described of what that's going to be like, because if all of a sudden in 10 or 15 or more cities, you have gun shoots and people being killed and bombs and attacks, I would say that's a pretty good indication that it started. That's going to be the kickoff. But, you know, as I said, we're right now in a limbo just waiting for this. And as I see it, it's been cooked up very well because we've destroyed law enforcement and their reputation. All our federal agencies are corrupt to the core. And, you know, that includes all our intelligence agencies. We don't have any of them on our sides. We don't have the federal government to a large degree, certainly the shadow part, on our side. And so when we talk about you can't make these many mistakes, whether even California in the water, that's just one small example. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't somebody, oops, I didn't know this was going to happen. All this stuff has already been planned out, and we're just walking through the steps that are bringing us closer to whatever this next event's going to be. And, you know, now we're hearing rumblings of they're going to tell us that, you know, the celestial beings, the aliens, are real, and they are, but they're going to tell us they're extraterrestrials from another planet or somewhere. They'll call them celestial beings. And then they're going to tell us that the Bible isn't true, and that they'll say things like the senator, the guy running for senator, Telluride, that's not his name, Tellur whatever, in Texas right now. This guy just yesterday called Jesus a barefoot rabbi who just spread the love of God or something like that. So basically, that's what's coming next. That could be one of the said events. It could be Ebola, it could be this alien thing, and then there will be some attacks. But you can bet we're looking at where the way things have been cooked up in the financial system, the power grid, and all the food and all the resources, all those could fail at once. And guess what's going to happen then, folks? It's going to look just like Baghdad in 2003. That's what.
Wow. So Randy is throwing his hat in for a ray of sunshine. It's good. It's neck and neck between him and Khalid. Khalid, I'm going to ask you to answer a question from Samuel, but I got a question for Jeff first. So the one that I popped up across the bottom asking if Trump would accept a bad deal because of fear of our grid being taken down by the Iranians, just tuck that away. But I want to go to Jeff here first. Jeff, this call it next generation recruitment strategies, pool, whatever. It breaks the existing, call it SOPs for catching terrorists in our country, right? Because now they're getting all these lone wolves. They're getting to them through gaming chats. I mean, it's like looking for a needle in a stack of needles, right? And they even admitted not too long ago, I don't remember what the number was, but it was 100% of the people that they had caught. The number I can't remember is how many they actually caught. They were told by somebody in that person's circle about them. It didn't come as a result of their investigation. I want to hear your thoughts on that, because does all of this, you know, flock cameras, Palantir, et cetera, does that, not that we want it, does that potentially address it? Because they're saying that it will. Or does the fact of the matter that when you're recruiting and radicalizing individuals, you either get, you know, some sort of word from somebody in their circle, or there's nothing's going to stop them?
Well, you've got, a lot of these are the, you know, see something, say something things. But in Palantir, they can look at your text, they can look at your emails. Maybe if they get better, they can, you know, go into gaming chats and all that stuff. But, you know, that's a lot of horsepower electronically to do that. But say they can. What they're not going to stop is you met a guy at the mosque, and that guy recruited you. It's face-to-face. It's in person. It's one-on-one. There's no recording. There's no electrons. And when that happens, you're blind. You know, it's like bugging the phone of someone who never uses their phone. Doesn't do you a damn bit of good. It's not going to stop it. Yeah, they might catch a few here and there. But it's not going to stop it. What the Bureau, sad to say, what the Bureau is good at is finding some normal lonely kid on the internet and convincing him that he wants to go blow something up, and then when he reaches out for explosives, they arrest him. The FBI creates more crimes than it actually solves, I think. And we saw it with the Gretchen Whitmer Fednapping case. Those guys never would have done a damn thing without the FBI prodding and pushing them at every step. And at one point, there were more FBI agents involved in the plot than there were plotters. And when you're creating crime for headlines, you're not doing your real job.
Yeah, true story. True story. Khalid, I'm just going to have you address Samuel's question about Trump potentially accepting a bad deal with Iran.
I don't think he will. There's been a lot of bad deals put forward. I think Donald Trump has a different problem with Iran. Iran has proven that it can. Iran has not proven. China and Russia have proven that they can use Iran as a staging ground. So getting Iran to accept a deal of any kind, because Iran itself says, well, look, we're not going to give our uranium to a third-party country. And that's one of the core discussions the U.S. has in their deal, that you have to hand over the uranium you have. Iran won't accept that, number one. Number two, Iran wants all their frozen assets unfrozen so they can have them. That's almost $20 billion. 20 billion? Yeah. $20 billion sitting in frozen assets of the state of Iran. Now, the problem you've got with Iran and Donald Trump accepting a bad deal is that Donald Trump is negotiating with people who are not the leadership of Iran. I said this the other night, that the IRGC about a month ago, declared martial law. They took over control of the country. It is now a garrison state. So the IRGC is making decisions. They're talking directly to Khamenei. They are making decisions for the country without any involvement of politicians. The problem that you got right now is that with Pakistan working as a mediator, and this is where we stepped in. When Pakistan started working as a mediator, we did it from the point of view we wanted the war to end. There are certain countries that do not want this war to end. And it's not just China, Russia, and the friendly state of Israel. There are countries in the Middle East that don't want this to end. And they are using it as a platform to distance themselves, make money off of oil, and to push economies to the point of breaking so that they can have more control. And I'm specifically talking about countries like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the UAE. These are countries that are fighting each other to begin with, and now they've got Iran as someone they can blame for whatever they want to do. Trump will not accept a bad deal. That's step number one. The problem is, what do you call a bad deal? Because anything that does not include the end of the IRGC is a bad deal. And you're not going to be able to do that from aerial bombing. Iran's proving it. The CIA put out an assessment, I think it was about 2.5 months ago, right after the U.S. concluded the heaviest bombing on Iran, that Iran still had 60% of its weapons. 60% of its weapons. They are getting drones driven in from Kazakhstan that are being built in Kazakhstan and brought to Iran. China is supplying them. Russia is supplying them. This war is not going to end easily. And Donald Trump has got a huge problem, because at some point you have to make that decision of ground troops. And ground troops means a protracted Vietnam-like situation. And the U.S. cannot afford a Vietnam-like situation. I want to add in a little bit on what Jeff was saying. Most of the online radicalization that's happening right now, there's a new system running. One of my biggest problems with the FBI is that they cannot get their head out of their asses to understand what's going on. Inside of mosques, military-aged males are being handed USBs. Those USBs are full of jihadi materials, videos, manuals, books that are not on the internet that people can track. And they are going home and reading them and watching them and learning from them, and they are turning into jihadis. And the U.S. does not know they're there. And we have repeatedly said this. that you're missing this component. You're looking at the dark web, you're looking at chat, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, Chris, but you're not catching this one. USBs are being passed out in these mosques, in these extremist mosques, radicalizing people by giving them books and videos that no one has access to. And that is radicalizing people even faster. 6 months to a year is what we were talking about before. We're down to 1 month. And at a high rate of speed, if someone is really wanting to get into a jihadi mentality, 7 to 14 days. To take a normal person and turn them into a radicalized jihadi, 14 days, Chris.
That's just mind-blowing how fast that happens. Thanks for the extended information there, Khalid. Randy, I have yet to see anything like any public advisories, let's say, that warn about probing related to infrastructure like grids, water treatment plants, all that sort of stuff. How would somebody who's taken an interest in this recognize that their local infrastructure is being assessed? Like, for example, if there was a contractor's vehicle at a substation, Randy, so let's just say it was FPL, Florida Power and Light, or Duke, whatever, and there's a truck there, and it doesn't say FPL on it, doesn't say Duke or whatever, has some other weird, name on it. Do you think that the average person would even look twice at that? Because I don't think that they would, and I think that's the kind of stuff we need to start looking at. But give me your thoughts on what people need to be looking out for, especially substations, water treatment.
Well, I don't think I don't think they would take a second look at it. We look at some of the other things that happened, and that's exactly what happened. They don't, they're not aware of this, so to speak. So it's not something that they're worried about or looking at, and they really have no awareness of it to begin with. Most Americans don't probably even realize this fact. So I would say what you've said already. You know what I mean? If it's a power grid, the people that live around there, certainly if you've lived around there for a number of years, you should know what the normal patterns are just because by proximity. And so that being is all of a sudden, if you see vehicles parked out there, maybe, and they're not actually doing anything, maybe that's an indication. Because again, if this is done professionally, they're going to look like worker trucks anyway. They're going to be wearing the same type of equipment. It may not be perfect, but it's going to be close enough. When you drive by, most people will not even take a second look. But again, if you live there, you look around, you should notice, what the normal, or you should know what the normal maintenance, if there is any, on these things, and what the trucks look like that come there, how long they're there, what they do, and then they're gone, or whatever the case. So if you see something outside the normal there, that's probably something you should pay attention to, like a truck staying there, or it's been there, or there's people there, but they don't really look like they're doing anything. They kind of look like they're staying busy, but they're not actually doing anything. That would be a good indication. Or again, something's out of place. Go ahead.
Well, I would just assume they work for the city.
Well, let's just take
the ball standing around.
Let's go back to the Summer of Love in 2019. How many people paid attention to the U-Hauls and all the stuff that dumped off pallets of bricks and all the other stuff that got dropped off? Nobody even noticed. They barely even noticed the pallets sitting there. It was only certain people that took pictures of that. The only reason we even know at this point. Now, some of those may have just ignored it out of willful ignorance, and it's because they think their side's winning. They know those people are on their side, so they're not going to say anything. But I will submit that more than likely, most people didn't even notice.
And I would agree 100%. Jeff, and I got to admit, I'm not really up to speed on this myself, Jeff. I want to hear your thoughts on the significance of the Sunni Shia operational convergence that's touched on in the strategy document.
Yeah, you got to understand historically, Sunnis and Shias don't get along. Each considers the other a heretic. The Sunnis, and it goes back forever. When Muhammad died, the Shias believed that Ali was supposed to be the leader of the movement. And the Sunnis said no. And that's how far back it goes. There's the Zaydis in Yemen, which are kind of they're Shia, but they're closer to Sunnis, and everyone else are kind of a sect. You have the Alawis in Syria, same kind of thing. But traditionally, the Sunnis and the Shias don't get along. Most Shias, not all, but most Shias are Persian, Iranians. And that is the heart of Shiaism. Sunnis are mostly Arabs and other ethnic groups, but mostly Arabs, Pakistanis, Indians as well. And they're based in Saudi Arabia. That's where Mecca is. That's where Medina is. And, right now it's kind of the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So they're kind of pairing up together. And you see it with Hamas, because most Palestinians are Sunni. And so, and you look at in Syria when, the old regime was in power, they were Alawis. And most mainstream Shias kind of look at the Alawis, and Sunnis do too, as kind of a weird offset cult kind of thing. Now, this Hezbollah is some Sunnis, but there's a lot of Shias in Hezbollah, so they're more of a natural ally. But Hamas and the Palestinians are overwhelmingly Sunni. So the fact you've got Iran, the base of Shia power in the world, supporting Hamas and actually going to war to help them is significant, because they're not fighting each other right now. They're fighting the rest of the world. But it's the Sunni Shia split is the main driver behind the idea that you've got Saudi Arabia is very much anti-Iran. And it was also one of the problems inside of Iraq, because Iraq, you had the Iraqis in the south were primarily Shias. The Iraqis in the west were primarily Sunni. And then when you go up into the north, you had Kurds who were Sunni, but there's a whole ethnic thing there too. So they had three factions constantly fighting with each other. But the fact that they're teaming up is out of convenience. And I can almost guarantee you, if they wiped out the Western world tomorrow, the day after, they'd start fighting each other again.
Great synopsis of all of that. Thanks, Jeff. I learned from that myself. Randy, coming back to you. So there was a fair bit of coverage, surprisingly, from the mainstream media on the federal counterterrorism strategy document, which was released last week. What do you reckon the average American interprets it as? I'm going to tell you how I think they interpret it. I think that the average American thinks that, well, they put this 26-page report out covering all of these terrorist threats and gang threats and blah, blah. So that must mean that they're doing something about it. And in reality, as everybody's kind of covered one way or another tonight, there's nothing happening at the local level as a result of this counterterrorism strategy. Just talk to me about what you would say to the average American, not our audience because they're up to speed, as far as the fact that we're not prepared.
Well, here's reality. Ever since Donald Trump stepped onto the political scene, the rest of our government, the shadow government, and the idiots and the criminals and the satanic pedophiles have freaked out. And so, the reality is they're all focused on him. And since they have the power over most of these federal agencies and organizations, guess where they pointed them towards? So they're not worried about the American public. And I'll tell you why, because I guarantee you just what I've been saying all along. They have something in their back pocket that when whatever kicks off, they think they can, for lack of a worse term, nuke it and stop it in whatever form they want. And then I think that they think they have the capability to, pretty much fix it afterwards. And so, so I think that there's a disparity of what our government puts out and what the public thinks it is. Just like this document, as y'all mentioned on Wednesday, this is just a cover your ass document, because one, because if people don't think that they don't know that SDN has put out this message, and Sarah and a few other people around the community, they know this. So it's gotten out regardless. So this document is to make it look like they, as you already mentioned, like they're doing something about it, and that, they've got it under control. And again, then when something happens, if they even have to explain it after whatever happens next, because they may not, it'll be an intelligence fail, right? Again, or, something to that effect. There'll be some simple excuse of, well, oops. And that's what we're looking at. So if you're an average citizen, what you need to realize, the document they just put out was to convince you that things are all right, and they're on it. But as we've mentioned on the show, and several of the experts of the panel have already pointed out, all the glaring things that are missing, right? The things that are not in the document that should be. And certainly talking about the power grid, seeing how even the CIA for the last 2 years has been telling people that there was going to be a major attack on the power grid. To not even mention that tells you how disingenuous and dubious this document actually is. It's a con. That's what it is. It's a con, as Chris said, to make the public think that they're doing something about it and they're all over it. Oh, but if they were, it would have been all there, every bit of it. And then guess what? We would be doing something about the power grid, since apparently we've had 2 or 3 years to get ready for, we know it's coming. No one's hardened it. No one's protected it. So when you look at it, it's just like when we tell kids when they start learning what the difference between lying and not lying, right? And so, the fact of the matter is, it's a con job. I don't know how else to put it, except this is to make it look like they're doing something, but they're not. Because again, if they were, we would see the other things that back it up, like I just mentioned. If they weren't being disingenuous about it, we would be doing something about it. They would have got on the power grid. We would have doubled down, and we would know, we'd be watching the mass deportations still taking place every single day. We would be going after the Trandingwa. We would be going after the jihadists. We would be going after the Chinese. But since none of that is happening, the only thing you can deduce is this is to make it look like it's happening. And hey, don't worry, everything's fine, so that you walk into it blind, because that's really what we're talking about. They want this attack to be all encompassing and devastating. And to do that, you have to have, element of surprise and then violence of action. Those are the two things that win the battle every single time.
Yeah, so I can see the setup of, they were on our radar.
That's right. They were on our radar, and see, that's why we put out that document. We just didn't do a good enough job, or something to that effect.
Yeah. So for those people, the conspiracy theory minded amongst us out there, the money kings, the powers that be, made no secret that they want to control everything that you do. AI data centers are not about leveraging AI, to solve this disease or that disease. It's all about tracking you, scoring you, and then controlling you. And all of these data, like the 5,500 that we have versus Germany's second, around 500, China's after that, is predicated on those 3 things that I just said. And I'll do a reacts video on that soon. I was on JJ Carroll's podcast, I can't remember, Monday or Tuesday, and I spoke at length on that particular topic. But Khalid, it's been a while since you've had the opportunity to bestow some, guidance and knowledge on our audience as far as specific things. We always cover it as we get towards the end, so not surprising that we're already starting in on it at this stage of the game. But what's one specific thing that you would recommend Guardians, start doing over the course of the next week as far as improving their observational, situational awareness, for lack of a better term?
Well, we've covered this at length on many occasions, but I mean, the one thing I think right now, because the threats are going to start manifesting themselves economically, then they're going to start manifesting themselves kinetically. We use a phrase here at Command 11 called cyberkinetic as a way to join all this together. What you're looking at the US right now is that you are a target no matter who you are. You are a target no matter who you are. So what you need to start doing is start making sure you know everybody around you. When someone comes into your area that does not belong there, figure out what they were doing, where they went, how long they stayed, write down a vehicle license plate number. When you're out in the market, start, it's what I call being a gray man. Start being inconspicuous. Make sure that people don't recognize you when you're there, but pay very close attention to those people who are trying to do the same thing, because you're doing it to make sure you're not a target, but the enemy is doing it to make sure they can do surveillance. They can operate inside your community without anybody noticing them. And it's something that it was put out in the ISIS manual about a month and a half ago, 15-page manual that ISIS put out, explaining to jihadis in the West how to adopt the gray man strategy, to be able to move amongst the community without anyone noticing them, without anybody recognizing them, without anybody flagging them. When you start seeing people moving like that, those are the people you pay attention to. The ones that come up to you and start, making an issue are not the threat, they're the distraction. Pay attention to them as well, because you're going to see a lot of distractions happening. We saw this in the middle of last year as well, when all the probing calls started happening, the bomb threats started happening. When universities opened up, there were bomb threats, and there was nothing behind the bomb threat at all. That was a level of them understanding how the American public would respond. Now they've come down to a very personal level. They are looking at homes, they are looking at communities, they are looking at neighborhoods, they are looking at cities and villages. They are watching everything now. Who goes where? How do they go there? What do they do? What time do they leave? What time do they come home? At what time is their home empty? All of these things become very important when you're working out an attack strategy. That's what's happening right now. I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but we've done this for well over 20 years at Command 11 now. And we have learned the patterns. We understand how a terrorist model is put together and how an attack model is put together. Right now, the US went from the hype of where all the probing calls were happening to a very quiet lull. And it's that lull that comes right before the attack. And this is when you need to start paying attention, because this is when the targeting happens. They put all of their pieces in place. Every single cell is operating. Every single cartel has been paid. All the things have been mapped out. Now they're watching you, which means you need to start recognizing them. That does not mean you're looking for just Muslims. You are looking for people that don't belong. Someone comes into your shopping mall, that by the way they're dressed, you can tell that they aren't there to buy anything. That's someone you pay attention to, because that's somebody who's there for something other than shopping. And that's the threat. So if I would say, what is the one thing you need to do? That's my synopsis on what you need to be doing over the next week.
Good stuff, Khalid. So we're going to roll into the third and final segment. I've got one question for everybody on the panel, separate question for each of them. Then we'll get into the final three things as far as identifying the X and getting off of the X. So segment number 3 is titled The Infrastructure Arc, What Comes Next in America Under Siege. So the 2026 counterterrorism strategies, relative silence on America's grid and infrastructure attack is not relative. They don't say anything about protecting our grid. And it's not something where we've only had, a short period of time to say, oh my goodness, we need to do something about the grid. For 3 decades now, every single year, somebody has introduced a bill in Congress to harden our grid, and it's been shot down every single time. The last number that I saw said $5 billion would harden our grids. We have 3 grids, East, West, Texas. You have 55,000 substations. Out of the 55,000 substations, there are 9 critical junctures, You take those 9 out, you cut power to 95% of America. The only people who'd be getting power from power plants at that stage, if you took those 9 substations down, would be the people between the power generation plant and the first substation. So this is not something new. It boggles me. We're a first world country with a third world power grid, and it's unacceptable, and it's a massive vulnerability. Anyway, it doesn't even touch on any of that stuff. That has to be a deliberate decision on somebody's part not to have included that in this counterterrorism strategy. They touch a little bit on water treatment, not a lot. They touch a little bit on communications backbones. I want to say it's like 2 paragraphs out of 26 pages. Don't quote me on that, but that's my recollection. It's very little at the end of the day. We know 100% for sure that our adversaries have access to all of these networks. They've exploited every single infrastructure network you can think of. 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I think it was 2 though, the Chinese government, their balls are so big, they went public and said, we have infiltrated the top 24 networks, infrastructure networks in America. So, I mean, it's a massive vulnerability. The next arc of America Under Siege, will move from the threat network analysis that this special's covered to the specific infrastructure vulnerabilities that those networks will exploit. So America Under Siege is the series that we're in the midst of right now. I've had some people ask about it. How do I get access to America Under Siege? Well, it's every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on the 10 channels or the 10 platforms that we blast this stuff out to. So I want to make a slight clarification on transformers, by the way. Smaller transformers right now are running about 18 months to replace, but the big concern is what are called the LPTs. Pardon me. Large power transformers. They're custom made for every single deployment. It's not something that we have on a shelf and can magically, put in play, depending on who the supplier is. So we get LPTs from China, we get them from South Korea, we get them from Germany. We build virtually none of this now in America. There's a little bit of smaller transformer stuff that we do. Is running anywhere from 60 to 72 months. So if you have a kinetic attack on any of those critical, substations where they're loaded up, all the critical ones are loaded up with LPTs, large power transformers, you're looking at major, major pain for America and Americans. So at the end of the day, your household, your community preparedness posture needs to evolve beyond personal readiness, as a baseline into more like distributed resilience that can sustain and function for days to weeks, when anything that depends on the grid goes down because the grid went down. And think of just the number of people who would die because their medications need to be refrigerated, like insulin, for example, and all of a sudden they have no electricity to do anything whatsoever. So with that being said, I'm going to get back to my normal MO here, and I'm going to go to Jeff first. He's right. Oops, wrong one. Hold on. Golly. This is what happens when you give the guy with one eye control of all this stuff. Jesus. I have to guess at everything on that side because I'm blind from here over. So it's just kind of, I put my mouse in that direction and click and hope that good things happen. As you all can see, about 25% of the time, it doesn't happen.
Sorry about the yelp. My dog wanted out.
No problem. Thanks, Jeff. So back to the counterterrorism strategy being just incredibly.
There he is again. Let me shut the door.
He's like, now I want back in.
Right. Is that the way it always goes?
I've got another one in here under my feet, so
it's usually my dog's letting me know that the evil Amazon guy is at the front door, and he's
my wife went in the garage, and he feels like he should be with her no matter what. So that's too funny. Yeah.
Back to the counterterrorism strategy, Doc Jeff. It's really quiet as far as the infrastructure attack aspect is concerned. Give me your speculation on what the classified picture looks like as far as infrastructure versus what they've put out in public.
I would hope to God that the classified version actually addresses the issue in a little more detail than the complete lack of detail in the version that we all saw. Because infrastructure is key to a functioning society. You know, if you got to have roads to transport goods on, you got to have railroads, you've got to have airports that function, you have to have a power grid, you have to have water systems, sewer systems, oil pipelines, gas pipelines. All that society cannot function without that stuff. And if they're ignoring any threats to it, they're freaking morons. I mean, because if you look at when we went into Iraq the first time, one of the first things we did was turn off the lights. You know, you take down the power grid, and it might be through kinetic attacks, it might be through slinging carbon fiber over the transmission lines, whatever it takes. And now we tend to be nicer people. We don't specifically target water purification plants and sewage treatment plants, that kind of stuff. We targeted the systems that supports their warfighter and supports their radar systems and things, which we also bombed into oblivion. And it paralyzed the Iraqis to a large extent because they couldn't do stuff. Another thing you do, you blow up all the bridges. We did it in World War II. You know, they did it to us. We did it to them. If you want to stop them from moving goods and materials and men, you blow up the damn bridges over the rivers. It's not that that much of a leap to think that why wouldn't they do that here? And there are some key choke points around here. We've already talked about the electrical stuff, but there's an oil distribution plant air facility in the middle of freaking nowhere in Oklahoma that very few people even know about. But I think something like 40 or 50% of the U.S. oil production goes through it. And that's where oil is priced for delivery too. And you can look on Google Earth. It's not that big of a place. There's a handful of facilities there, but it wouldn't be that hard to damage it.
Yeah, true story. That we are so many soft targets. I covered it on my Reacts video last night that it's mind blowing. Khalid, your question for segment number 3 revolves around the domestic radicalization section. I just want to get a little bit more comments from you here from the angle of what does the infrastructure threat look like when you combine the foreign access to networks and domestically radicalized actors who now have access to critical systems. And it doesn't take much to have access to critical systems. I can honestly say there's not a single substation that I've ever seen in my entire life where you couldn't take shots at it with a simple AR-15 and, puncture the transformer buckets, the mineral oil drains out, they overheat, poof, gone. And now you're waiting forever and a day. So just talk to me about those 3 things, how they converge together. So you've got domestic radicalization, like lone wolves. You have access to all of these infrastructure things that are being directed by foreign adversaries. And then you've got the potential to do this both cyber and kinetic simultaneously. It's not a pretty picture.
Let me give you a couple numbers to start off with. It costs a total of $500 for a lone wolf to carry out a terror attack in the U.S. on infrastructure. $500. And how does he do it? Commercial drone. That's the first number that I want you to think about. $500. Number 2, there are 90,000 mobile network cells that China has set up in the United States right now that we know of for a fact. When you talk about infrastructure in the US, it is the easiest game in the world. When I look at someone who's been radicalized, I take a normal person and I say, okay, listen, you know what? You're pissed off at your country. You're pissed off at your community. You need to do something that wakes people up. The guy goes, well, I'm going to make a bomb. No, 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 no. Why are you making a bomb? Why put yourself out there and be taken out immediately when I can use you over and over and over? And it's the reason why for lone wolves, we now use the remote operated asset is the name we use for a lone wolf actor now, because the remote control is sitting in a foreign country and they're guiding them. They're sending them money saying, okay, listen, go buy XYZ drone, learn how to fly it. Is there a power grid in your area? Is there a transformer in your area? I want you to fly that drone into that transformer and then be done with it. When you start looking from that point of view, and then you look at the speed at which people are being radicalized, there is no target in the US that cannot be hit. And at a $500 price, Chris, that is nothing. What used to be huge, spectacular attacks that cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, then came down to tens of thousands of dollars. Lone wolves then started using AR-15s, machetes, cars to carry out attacks, but it was a one singular attack. Now lone wolves are being trained to be remote operated. So they are carrying out attacks with drones. So you can use a 3D printer to attach a payload carrier that'll fly a drone into a target, drop the payload, drone flies away. That's your new level of warfare.
So let's run with that just for a second, and then Randy gets the final kick at the can for segment number 3. Jeff, you mentioned carbon fiber, but work with me here. How much time, money, and effort would it require these guys to use drones to fly over power stations and just drop strips of aluminum foil? And what would the effect of that be? And for anybody out there who's a Karen who's going to say we're giving them ideas, this has already been uncovered multiple times in open source intelligence that they want to do this. But explain the effects of that, Jeff, and then Randy to you for the final one.
Well, it causes short circuits, and it may not necessarily burn out the transformers because a piece of aluminum foil can't take a big current before it just melts. Or in that case, it would probably just vaporize. But it would probably trip, because everything is monitored by computers and by SCADA systems. What it would do is it would trip all the switches, all the safeties, all the backup systems would shut down for safety reasons. Now, if you had bigger wires or more high-tech stuff, you could damage some transformers and things like that. But they would use the SCADA system against us because SCADA systems reads a fault and it does what it needs to do to protect the system. And in this case, it would be shutting everything down. And in more rural areas, it would cause a momentary surge, which would cause what are basically glorified circuit breakers to pop. A lot of these are out in the middle of frickin' nowhere, and they have to be reset by hand, which means somebody has to drive out there. They have a great big fiberglass rod, and it's up on the top of a pole, and they have to switch it, have to turn it back on. Like you would reset a breaker at your house, you have to go out to the panel. They may have to go out to the middle of frickin' Nebraska to do it. So it would screw up a lot of stuff, and it'd be relatively easy.
And cost next to nothing. The ROI is just incredible.
Yeah. And right? You're not even losing the drone.
Yeah.
They can drop the stuff and then come home, and then you can go and use it again. You're not destroying the drone in the process.
Yeah, just like Khalid mentioned as well. So, Randy, I want you to put your green beret on for this one. We used some directed energy weapons in the Maduro raid, and I mean, the numbers are incredible, right? We had 18 of you guys on the ground. We took out over 300 of their best guys, and we used DEW's directed energy weapons. But we also knocked out their grid and other things in that city. Knowing what we know, that all these bad actors have both access to all of our critical networks over the interwebs, as well as almost all this stuff is easy to get to physically from a kinetic perspective, especially including the stuff that Jeff and Klee just covered. What order would make sense for them to attack? So in other words, power grid, water supply, gas lines, gas, supply chain to the gas station, comms networks, all of these things. What would you, like, if you were directing the attack as a Green Beret on, not us, but let's say somebody else, what would the logical order look like to you? And I'm just asking you to speculate. I'm not asking you to say, well, this is the way they do it.
No, it would be comms, it would be electric, it would be fuel. You shut those three down and they're done. It's over. It's game, set, match. And in fact, that's what we do. In fact, even on hits, even doing a hit in Iraq, certainly at certain periods of time, there was a time on my last trip that we couldn't use it because a Iraqi who we had turned into an interpreter. So basically, this guy was an Iraqi. He worked with us. At some point, they liked him enough. They sent him all the way back here to the United States, or didn't send him back. They sent him to the United States. He went through basic training for the Army to become an interpreter in the Army. Then they sent him back. This guy ends up getting kidnapped. Now, we never saw him again. And in fact, my team, we blew 17 doors in the Karada Peninsula trying to find this guy. So we got intelligence that basically, they didn't know who he was when they snatched him up. But true to form, our media blew up quickly. Oh, United States soldiers got kidnapped in Iraq. So then they realized who they had. They quickly sold him to the other side. The other side then put him through a wood chipper instantly. So it was done. But the problem was they had received one phone call by the captors about him from a cell phone. So then they would not allow us to use. Now, normally when we were going to hit, certainly in the middle of Baghdad, and at this time you got to realize all the Iraqi police are supposed to be on our side, but they're the early warning system for the bad guys in all the neighborhoods. That's really what these checkpoints were. And so we were able to use a Navy bird that will block out 19 city blocks. No signal will get in or out. And we would do that so that we could, obviously pull up to the people's house and the bad guys would still be there. Because what we had learned, and certainly that's why as things developed and it became a mature combat zone, we weren't driving around in blackout with nods all the time anymore, because you're not going to sneak up on anybody in the middle of Baghdad with 100 or 200 vehicles and a stick coming in to do a hit at night. It's just not going to happen. So what we learned is if you drove white light and doing 60 miles an hour, come to a screeching stop outside the door, hop out, pop the charger on the door, get to the safe distance, blow the door, and you get in, everybody was still home. But if you did not do that and you tried to go with blackout and doing nods and all that other stuff, by the time you got to the objective, the Iraqi police had already warned them. And when you got in the house, the only people that were left were the women and children, and the men were all gone. And so we learned that very quickly. And I think did I answer the question? My bad. I'm trying to think if I need to close the loop on something before I back over.
I mean, you put lots of meat on the bone, but you closed the loop when you basically said the three things: comms, electric and gas, fuel.
Well, that is exactly what we would do, because it's debilitating. If you can't communicate, it doesn't matter. Even with the other two things, without communications, man, there's a lot of confusion and a lot of people are going to get dead real quick. Without electricity, the same thing. And then certainly without fuel, which is just as critical as the other two, certainly when you're talking about military operations, but even as the public as a whole, fuel is important. And if you don't have fuel, let's just take a good example from World War II, the Battle of the Bulge. The reason that was such a deadly and a horrific battle was because both sides, bunch of tanks from us and the Germans, all of us ran out of gas at the same time, at the same place. So it was basically a fight to the death.
Yeah, that's interesting. You would say, I watched a special, I don't know, sometime this week I had it playing over here that spoke to that, Randy, especially in the end days of World War II, where we were traversing France, going across the Rhine and stuff, and there were German vehicles, tanks all over the place that had no fuel. They'd run out, and the guys had booked out of there.
So if you study the history of it, one of the very last offensive that the Nazis launched was in those final days. And what they did was they tried to launch an offensive to go cut off our supply routes because of exactly what we're talking about. Now, fortunately, they failed. We stopped them. But that's what their intent was, and that was the very last offensive maneuver that the Germans pulled for the rest of the war. The rest of it was defensive and obviously retreating back all the way to
the homeland.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what's the city, but I had my
Alzheimer's. Berlin.
Berlin, that's right.
Yeah.
They all running back to Berlin. But again, their last offensive was to try to cut off our supply lines because we were just, well, as we've mentioned, we're one of the very best in those supply routes. Right. And they knew, first of all, Germans knew this was the last ditch. If they did not pull this off, it was game, set, match. And of course, it's all history now.
So, Jeff, I got to ask you before we go into identifying the X, getting off the X, did you ever happen to find yourself in Berlin while the Cold War was still active, while the wall was in place?
No, I could not go behind the Iron Curtain because I got blown to the Soviets by a spy.
No shit.
They knew who I was. Yeah. Jim Nicholson.
Tell the story. This is interesting stuff. Run with that.
Yeah, Jim Nicholson was a CIA guy who ended up spying for the Russians, and he got a hold of the records, the names, the list of all the people in my class when I was going through. He was there after me when I was going through the farm, but he got back. He had access to a lot of the previous records of previous students, and I got this letter saying, "Oh, by the way, yeah, you've been blown to the Soviets." I went, great. And I talked to a friend of my classmate, and I said, "Did you get your Nicholson letter?" is what we all called it. And he goes, "No." And he says, "I got blown before Nicholson because Aldrich Ames blew me to the Russians because he was on my promotion panel." I went, "Man, you got double bad luck." Yeah, so I couldn't go anywhere the Russians were. I was actually nervous how I went to Uzbekistan before going into Afghanistan because I was like, they probably know who I am. But they were our allies at the time. So
right on. So as far as identifying the X is concerned on tonight's topic, it's pretty easy, and that would be the public's belief that because they put out this, it's the most honest counterterrorism document produced, but it's obviously full of holes as we've covered tonight. But I think a lot of people probably, the X would be them thinking, well, this is a complete picture, when in reality, there was a lot of politics went into this strategy document. Like, hey, don't put that in there, make sure you say this about that over there to, for people to protect their interests. So that being the case, how do you get off the X? So I'm going to hit one idea for each of you and then let you roll with it. So Khalid, this is something that's really in your wheelhouse. My recommendation to the audience is build your soft target baseline this week. So in other words, everything in their community that's a soft target, make some notes. Hey, there's normally people here at such and such a day, but not, or time, not that time. There's this many cars in the parking lot or not, like ballpark. Establish that baseline. Give me your thoughts on how you do that for soft targets, Khalid.
Well, soft targets are the hardest thing to understand because there's so many soft targets. I mean, the biggest target we always look at is schools, because when you hit a community school and you take children hostage or you kill children, it does so much psychological damage that the second strike is much worse. So for me, I always say, look, start with the softest of softest. The softest underbelly is where you begin. And you start with your schools. From your schools, you look to your transport system. From your transport system, you look at how your law enforcement moves. Then you look at how traffic moves. Then you look at where in your downtown, in your shopping areas, at what time do you have the most people there?
One quick question, Khalid. How do you do that with schools in particular without somebody spotting you and saying, that guy's casing the school?
Well, you would tell the school. I mean, realistically, if you're looking to protect the school, then you tell the school that you go, I just want to look at you, what your security level is. This is who I am. This is where I live. My son or daughter goes to school here, and I just want to look at your security level because, things are getting bad. And we just want to make sure that our children are protected. There's no school that is going to say anything to you if you're helping them. Now, if you're standing outside with a camera and you've got a notepad in your hand and you're writing stuff down, yeah, they're going to think you're casing the place. But the intent of talking to people like this, the intent of building into shops, into communities, and into the soft target areas is you get the people on board. You get them looking at these things. Look, there's an access point right there that doesn't have any locks on it. When you shut down your shop at night, I mean, I've been watching for the past 2 or 3 days, and when you close your shop at night, there's nobody around you, and you've got this bag full of money that you're taking to the bank. Aren't you a little concerned that you might get robbed? People mentally have gotten to a state of, well, nothing's going to happen, so I don't need to have my guard up. When you start putting up your guard by telling people, listen, this is a threat, this is a potential issue, this is a potential problem that you could have as a human being, as a shopkeeper, as a school, as a shopping center, you've raised your voice and increased their awareness. When you stand outside throwing rocks and going, well, look, this is where the problem is, this is where the problem is, you're helping yourself, but you're not helping your community. This is the time in this week when you start going around going, I go to this shopping center every day at this time, and there's usually this many vehicles. But it's very easy at night to come to this place, and there's no one around to protect anybody. Someone comes out of the shop at night, and they could easily be robbed. That's a warning you give to the shop owner that, this is something you need to look at. You need to protect yourself. This is you being proactive. This is not you just protecting yourself. It's you protecting your community. And that's where Hadi says, I've spent a lot of time doing this here in Pakistan, talking to law enforcement, talking to shopkeepers, talking to people, helping them understand that where are the vulnerabilities. That's how you protect yourself, when you identify vulnerabilities that they don't see. Someone goes to like you go to your office every day, you're not going to see where the weak points are because you never paid attention to it. Someone new walks in and says, listen, that doorway, there's no security on it. What if someone were to come through there? What would you do? And people start thinking.
Yeah, fresh set of eyes, good thing as well. So that's number one, to get off this X of assuming that, you've outsourced your security for your entire life and that it's going to continue to work just honky-dory for you. Baseline the soft targets in your neighborhood, in your community. Randy, you were an Echo at one point in time on a Green Beret team, so that would be the comms guy. My second piece of advice to the audience to get off the X relative to the topic at hand is to establish a neighborhood communications chain that doesn't depend on the grid or the cell network to function. But pick that up and run with it as far as how many neighbors on average would you need to get involved. And I don't mean based on your large subdivision or development. I'm thinking more in distance, right? So you've got a lot of people living in your community, on top of each other, bunched up pretty good. You don't need all of them to be part of this, right? But you probably need somebody every block or 2 blocks, whatever the number is. Just give me an idea on like what the average person should be doing. What do they need to get for radios, and how many people realistically they need based on distance, like city blocks, or you can call it a half a mile, whatever you want.
Well, I'm just going to go with what we do, like the bases that we built in Iraq, right? So if you were your neighborhood and you wanted, and everybody there, and you're able to do this, I would say, roughly every 100 yards, right, along the perimeter would be a good start. Because if you have somebody, because again, there's a line of sight, right? And that's what you're looking for, what your people can vision. So every 100 yards, there's a house, whoever that is, you want them in your group because you're able to have eyes, sectors of fire, so to speak, of sectors to see, so you can see what's coming if there's any type of attack or any movement at all. So about every 100 yards along that perimeter would be nice. You know, you probably don't need quite that many on the interior, but it depends on how big your neighborhood is. You might. But then it goes down to communications, how that's going to, I would go down, I would start planning at the very bottom where you have nothing. So whether you're hanging little flags or you're putting something on the tree or the fence or out in the yard, you know, there's some sort of signal, and you would have different ones. You know, red means bad, green means good, yellow means caution, you know, that type of, you'd have some sort of system. But then going up in case you still have electricity or the network's still up, you're able to use radios and cell phones. You would, you know, it would be advantageous for you to deploy those or have those in the same, like every 100 yards, right? Because if we put up the bases, certainly the bigger ones that we built up over in Iraq and Afghanistan, if they put guard towers, it was just like Scolic 13, which is every 100 yards. And there's a reason for that. But again, it comes down to being able to see everything that's coming. And so, you know, so then you would work out your combo plan if you have electricity, starting with your cell phones, because that's the easiest. Everybody's got one. If that doesn't work, you have your backups and you have your other radios like what we talked about. And then it's just of whatever you are going to use in your plan. You would want to have some, again, when you have electricity, then you can use everything and the comms is up. But you need to have a plan for when one or both of those are out also, so that you can use some other type of device. And then all the way down to, again, hand signals or flags or even hand crank radios. Now, you're not going to be able to communicate with each other with hand crank radios, but you may be able to, if you have some smart folks in communications, you may be able to have a frequency that you can hit on those crank ups and somebody can still put out a message. But again, it's also, you will be able to pick up any messages that are coming from the outside. But again, you know, in that respect, you do need to take it with a grain of salt, certainly if it's a message, you know, that's coming from the government. Because again, they're not always, they've proven themselves to be less than reliable or trustworthy. So you want to hear that message. Yes, you do, because then you might know where it's going, but you got to discern whether if it's saying come to the FEMA camp, whether you're actually going to go to the FEMA camp or not. So
check out this killer.
Oh, dang.
This killer ace beam flashlight. The machining's amazing. For those of you who don't know, I have a severe addiction to flashlights. Why am I showing it to you? This is a great way to communicate over a distance when you've got these really powerful ace beams. Like, this is a badass flashlight. And as you can see,
or even a mirror, you know, those flashlights are great for that, but you can use mirrors. Heck, we can all the way go back to what the Indians use, and you can use smoke sickles and blankets.
Look at the size of this flashlight from ace beam.
Yeah. So what's that made out of?
This is machined aluminum. It's badass, man.
Nice.
But my point is that if it gets into, you know, close quarters, you could always still, you know, whack somebody with that. Would do a good number on them. So anyway, with that being said, Jeff, would come to you last, and it's on the power side of things. So my recommendation to the audience is map out your reliance on the grid, your dependency on the grid. So like, map out what your exposure is, and then go to work on closing those critical gaps. Pick that ball up and run with it, Jeff, as far as what the priorities are in general.
Yeah, I think the average American is one blackout away from losing everything in their home. Not everything, but I mean, all your food, your freezer go down, your refrigerators go down, your internet goes down, your TV goes down, your cell phones go down after time. Because you got to keep them charged, but eventually they'll run dead. Everything in our lives or almost everything is very critically dependent upon electricity. Even the drinking water, you may have a tower in your water tower in your town, but you got to have a pump to get it up there. And if the power grid goes down, your water's going to go away quickly. If you're on a municipal system, there's not much you can do about that. That's when you get water bobs and you start filling up bathtubs and things like that. So you have water, but ideally you want to have, cases of drinking water at least. You can have other water for flushing toilets and, kind of giving yourself a towel bath, that kind of stuff. But when it comes to drinking, you want to make sure that the water you have is safe. Another option is to have, you filter it, but then you have, you can purify it, either reverse osmosis, you can boil it and then condensate it, or you can use chlorine, Clorox. Water tastes like crap, but it saves you. Iodine tablets, hikers have used those for years. They work. They taste like shit, but they work. When it comes to power, you're going to have an alternative power supply. It's not going to help your internet. When it's gone, it's gone. But as far as your refrigerator and your freezers, if you have other systems that you can charge up your cell phones, things like that. So you need to have a solar generator with the battery backups with a solar cell to charge it, and or a generator that's gasoline or propane being the best. Dual fuel's even better, because then you can use gas or propane. But you got to have redundancies. And if you're just dependent on the grid, you have no redundancy.
Yeah, true story. I highly recommend propane power generators or dual fuel like Jeff's talking about.
I have both. That and solar batteries.
You can stack up propane tanks. They never go bad. You don't have to rotate them like you do with pump gas. There are ways that you can make pump gas last longer if you have the right containers that block 100% of the oxygen getting to them, or the air getting to them, sort of thing. But with that being said, a couple quick things that I want to hit on here. Let me get us over to the other stage.
I just wanted to add in real quick before we roll off of that. Another thing we could look into that I've been looking into that Father Doug turned me on to was EcoFlow. These things are battery powered. They can be charged. Yeah, I looked into it. Now, again, this is expensive. Not everybody, I wish I could do it, but there's a $12,000 system that basically runs energy perpetually all on its own. So you don't even need to be hooked up to the grid if you had that thing. Now, not everybody can afford 12 grand. I'm just throwing it out there to show that these things can be stacked and used to where they charge theirself, but keep the power running in your house.
Yeah, I have an EcoFlow, but I got it primarily to keep the freezer going. And thing is, if power goes off, you only really need to run your freezer if you're not opening it, about an hour a day. If you're using it a couple hours a day at different times, let it cool off and then do it again. And they'll run it for quite a bit.
So this August marks 5 years since I acquired Survival Dispatch's assets. I have physically laid hands on over 500 power stations. And I'll leave it at this, but EcoFlow is a lot better at marketing than they are quality-wise versus some other choices. And if you are looking for the very best batteries and power stations at the best price per watt hour for a LifePo 4, you cannot beat Dabson, DABBSSON. I've never been paid a penny by these guys. I do the testing. The results speak for themselves. We actually have a family member that we gave a really large Dabson to a couple years ago. The power just went out on them in Texas. They texted my wife and said, "We charged this when you gave it to us 2 years ago. We haven't turned it on since we turned it on, had 99% battery level." Nobody makes better batteries than Dabson does.
Do that. They will, if 6 months they'll drain because they've got computers and stuff inside and they just slowly drain. If you got to plug them in. Yeah, I top mine off, every couple of weeks. I plug it in, leave it on for a few hours.
Dabson have all the same features that EcoFlow do. That inverters are inverters at the end of the day, but all batteries for power stations are not created equally. So with that being, and I'm not trying to rain on anybody else. I'm just telling you, this is the hands-on experience. It's an area where I've probably got more experience than anybody you've ever met when it comes to power stations and water treatment products. And I like doing the power stations. I despise doing water treatment because everybody in the water treatment business are crooks, except for Sawyer Products and Grail. Everybody else, they're a bunch of rotten-ass crooks. So with that being said, survivaldispatch.news, this is like the epicenter of all of the content for SDN, and we give away a shit ton of content. Survivaldispatch.com, it has, I don't know, we're at like 1,400 survival articles. So it's on survival type things, right? Where Survival Dispatch News is more urban related, terrorism, all those sort of things. And if you sign up as a guardian, $7 a month, you'll get access to our Element community, upwards of 12 to 15,000 messages per week. It's all, segmented into different groups. It's my server. It's my physical server. It's my software code that's been used to modify Element. It's as rock solid as it gets from a security and privacy perspective. If you want to compare it to stuff like Signal, go read my articles on how compromised Signal is now. So with that being said, I want to speak really quickly to Remnant, okay? I wrote 104 episodes of Remnant in advance. I've published 10 episodes now in the past 5 weeks of this audio podcast. There's a new article goes out every day, and I did that to try and fill in some of the gaps. But here's a conclusion I recently came to. For me to do a 1-hour podcast for every episode that I've written is not doing it service. There's certain things, undertones and themes that I can't squeeze into a 1-hour audio version of Remnant each weekend. So starting tomorrow, you're going to get episode 11 if you're a paying subscriber. If you're not a paying subscriber, you'll get episode 11 next Saturday. But come next weekend, each episode is going to be split in half. There's going to be 45 to 60 minutes on the Saturday, 45 to 60 minutes on the Sunday for paying subscribers. The public will get them for free a week later. I have to do this because I'm not willing to cut out any more of the detail from Remnant. Okay, so pardon me, this is the Substack. But just go to survivaldispatchremnant.com. If you want in, you want the early access, you want the ability to influence the series, and get invites to the Remnant roundtables that JP and the boys host. And you want all the companion articles that are released with the podcast that only go to paying subscribers, $7 a month. I've had people say, well, I pay for Survival Dispatch Guardian. I shouldn't have to pay for Remnant. It's a deeply insulting thing to say. You're saying that my time and efforts are worth nothing, number one. Number two, when you went and watched, let's say, Star Wars, did you think forever thereafter that, the Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, you should get them for free? I mean, it's pretty insulting for the people who said that they should get it for free because they're a Guardian. Guardians is hardcore survival, intel, and all the stuff related to that. Remnant is a fictional podcast, but the solutions are not fictional. It's a great learning opportunity. So you're going to get episode 11 tomorrow for subscribers. Sunday, I'll be putting out an article, but there will not be episode 12. I can't do another episode and look at it and step back and go, shit, I didn't have enough time to cover this, and this. And then the following week, you'll still get 2 podcasts, but it'll be the same episode split into 2 different pieces. Want to give a shout out to our premier sponsor, Carnival, and this is especially for the Guardians. These guys have made a huge, huge move. Huge move. I'm going to share it with the Guardians on Sunday, and there's going to be a 72-hour window from Monday to Wednesday where there's going to be a special offer for you guys. And this really is a special circumstance and offer. So Guardians, stay tuned for that. I'll share it with you on Sunday. And the public, stand by. I'll share it with you Monday night. And I can't go without mentioning my friends at Wasatch Wagyu. How many sandwiches do you think I made from their dill pickle jerky today? Anyone want to take a swing at that?
Let's say 3.
Oh, come on. You're not even close, man.
No, Randy won. I made 3 dill. I made right here 3 dill pickle jerky sandwiches on homemade sourdough bread. Holy crap. Absolutely amazing. But I want to show you something here because this deal's insane. Go to wasatchwagyu.com, shop, click on jerky. When the page comes up, look for the black circles that tell you something's on sale. Look at this right here. So 9 of the sticks, which are, all natural. These are basically all natural flavors, no chemicals, blah, 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 blah. 9 of them retails for $60. Greg knocked it down to $24.99. You can use my discount code, S as in Sam, D as in David, 20, SD20, get 20% off. Nobody else gets 20% off but Mike Glover and me. That knocks it down to $19.99. So you're basically paying 1/3 of the price for Wagyu jerky. And the Wagyu steaks, the 100% Wagyu steaks sell for $100 a pound, and this is the same meat. So to get 9 sticks for $19.99 is unfrickin' believable. Like absolutely amazing. So with that being said, it's a Friday night, and our friend Pastor Kessel is going to bless everybody in the Survival Dispatch universe. Really appreciate Eric coming on every Friday and doing this, by the way. It's a good way to kind of go into the weekend on a positive note. Eric, it's all you. Take it away.
I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you. Let's pray. Precious Heavenly Father, we thank you again for the wisdom and the knowledge of the men that are on this panel tonight. And may we learn from their experiences. And again, Lord, thank you for letting them impart their information to us. We pray for your protection for our country, as many have forgotten the word indivisible. For our SDN brothers and sisters and upon their families, we pray that you would keep them safe while so much is happening in this country. Lord, we pray, we certainly praise you that Khalid is alive and able to continue to impart great wisdom to us from his experiences and information he's collected. We continue to pray for his health, both physically and mentally. Pray for those that have been threatened. Lord, I pray your hand of protection upon them. And Lord, we certainly ask that you would bless those that have been a blessing to so many, whether physical items or prayers lifted up to you. We thank you for your goodness to us, Lord, and we just ask that you would continue to be good to our nation. May you continue to bless our SDN family, our law enforcement officers, our first responders, our troops here and abroad. And Lord, we just ask that you would continue to bless the United States of America. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Right on that. I appreciate that very much. So again, Remnant episode 11 tomorrow for paying subscribers, a week from tomorrow for the public. I'm going to publish a special article on Sunday. The panel will be back on Monday with the next episode in our Long War series. I'll be back Tuesday with a reacts video. I think that's basically it now. So God bless our law enforcement officers. God bless our military. God bless America.
God bless America.
God bless.
God bless America.
Enjoy the closing video, y'all. It's a brand new one.
Silent bond we share. Hello shadows, welcome back. I've been waiting in the black. A quiet instinct softly rising while the city slept, no one realizing. And the fire that was born between us two burns on through in this silent bond we share. Through restless nights we move as one, concrete veins under the gun. Beneath the glow of distant lights, I feel his focus cut the endless fights. When the world went blind in a sudden flare, he was there in this silent bond we share. This is the silent bond we share. No words, just heartbeats in the air. Through the darkness, through the fight, my canine guardian by my side. In the silence, we are one. Loyalty forged where the wild things run. This is the silent bond we share. Cold glare, I finally see 1,000 threats staring back at me. Humans shouting without meaning, hearts closed, no one believing. The language made of breath and muscle, never spoken out loud. And the the crowd can't break this silent bond we share. This is the silent bond we share. No words, just heartbeats in the air. Through the darkness, through the fight, my canine guardian by my side. In the silence, we are one. Loyalty forged where the wild things run. This is the silent bond we share. They laugh and say it's just a dog. They'll never feel the power in the fall. This trust that cuts through every storm. This fire keeping both our souls warm. Listen close, let it grow. In every step, in every blow. This is the silent bond we share. No words, just heartbeats in the air. Through the darkness, through the fight, my canine guardian by my side. In the silence, we are one. Loyalty forged where the wild things run. This is the silent bond we share. And it echoes